Distinguished Senator George Thompson Sekibo.
Yes, Mr. Senior President, I am Senator George Thompson Sekibo. I rise to second that the votes and proceedings of Thursday, 22nd December 2022 be approved. I so second.
Thank you. Distinguished colleagues, those in favor of the motion that the votes and proceedings of Thursday, 22nd December 2022 be approved, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. The votes and proceedings of Thursday, 22nd day of December 2022 is hereby approved. Letter from Mr. President. Dear Distinguished Senate President, transmission of the Federal Produce Inspection Service Bill for consideration. Pursuant to Section 58, Subsection 2 of 1999 Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria as amended, I forward here with the Federal Produce Inspection Service Bill for the current consideration of the Senate. The Federal Produce Inspection Service Bill seeks to provide for the inspection and enforcement of grades and quality standards of produce and commodities intended for import into or export from Nigeria at ports of shipment and for related matters. While I hope that the request will receive the usual expeditious consideration of the Senate, please accept the single Senate President the assurance of my highest consideration. Yours sincerely, Muhammadu Buhari. Senator Baketa, letter, please, because we are at the... Yes, Secretary, take note, please. Thank you very much for that. Request, dear Distinguished Senate President, request for amendment to 2022 Appropriation Expression Clause 12. I write to request your consideration for an amendment to the 2022 Acts Expression Clause 12 as passed and assented to. The 2022 Appropriation Act Section 12 states, in line with the provisions of Section 318 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, this bill expires after 12 months, starting from 1st day of January to 31st day of December 2022, when assented to. The proposed 2022 Appropriation Supplementary Budget submitted to National Assembly for consideration, as well as recent 2022 Appropriation Capital Releases to MDS, are unlikely to be utilized before December 31st, 2022 due to the late release of the funds, which will lapse if the capital implementation is not extended beyond December 31st, 2022. In the light of the above, the National Assembly is requested to kindly amend the 2022 Act Expiration Clause to reflect March 31st, 2023 for the capital component only. Please accept the single Senate President the assurance of my highest regards. Announcement. This is the conference committee members for a bill for an act amend the National Center for Women Development Act Cap N15 LFN 2004 to enhance the functions of the center and rename the center after Dr. Mariam Babangida and for related matters 2022. The members are distinguished Senator Betty Apiafi, Chairman, Senator Okejef, Member, Senator Biodun Olujimi, Member, Senator Professor Nora Ladida Dut, Member, Senator Mohamed Sani Musa, Member, Senator Adamu Mohamed Bulkachua, Member, and Senator Michael Inachi, Member. The letter requesting the extension of the implementation of the 2022 appropriation bill from 31st December 2022 to 31st March 2023 is referred to the Committee on Appropriations to report this back before we close. Petitions. Leader of the Senate. Leader of the Senate.
Mr. President.
Distinguished Senator Degi Biobarakuma.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, my name is Senator Biobarakuma Wanga Degi Remie. I represent Bayelsa East Senatorial District. Mr. President, I like to rely on Order 42, and for want of time, since we are all familiar with the contents of Order 42, Mr. President may allow me to make progress.
Yeah, you may proceed, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I rise with a heart full of grief to bring to the notice of the Senate the demise of Senator Enatimi Rufus-Piff. This senator hailed from Brass local government area of Bayelsa State, which is part of my senatorial district. He served in the Senate of the Federal Republic of Nigeria between 2003 and 2007. He died after a brief illness in Abuja. Senator Enatimi Rufus-Piff, after his education in the United States of America, came back to Nigeria and was involved in active service for the past 40 years. Enatimi Rufus-Piff was one time Secretary to Government of the old River States when Rivers and Bayelsa States were together. He served as Secretary to Government He had also served as Commissioner of Education in Bayelsa State. Distinguished colleagues, I know that the people of Rivers State and Bayelsa is going to miss him. It's a great loss to Bayelsa State and to Nigeria. And the family had communicated to me to humbly notify the Senate and to also seek the President's approval for the traditional courtesy to be accorded him in honor of his transition by observing silence to honor him. Mr. President, I thank you for this opportunity. Thank you. I so submit.
Thank you very much, distinguished Bio Barakuma, because you have come under our standing order 42, which is personal explanation. Because you have come under our standing order 42, personal explanation, this is not open to any debate. And we'll observe 1 minute silence in honor of the departed former senator. Thank you. 1 minute silence, please. May the soul of distinguished Senator Enatimi Rufus Spieth rest in perfect peace. Amen. Leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, the first business of the day is the presentation of an executive bill standing in my name on the 2022 Appropriation Act Amendment Bill 2022, SB 1092. Mr. President, you may wish to invite the Clerk of the Senate to read the short title of the bill.
Clerk of the Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, 2022 Appropriation Act Amendment Bill 2022, SB 1092, first reading.
Please, they don't have order paper. Senator Sekiba doesn't have order paper. Secretariat. (2022) Appropriation Act Amendment Bill 2022 SB 1092, first reading taken. Leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, the first order of the day is the second reading of the 2022 Appropriation Act Amendment Bill 2022 SB 1092. Mr. President, my distinguished colleagues, I move that the Senate do suspend its rule 78 subsection 1 in order to read the bill a second time. I so move.
Minority Leader.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I rise to second the motion that the Senate do suspend its relevant rules to take this second reading as so second.
Distinguished colleagues, those in favor of the motion that Leader, you just go ahead and present your lead debate. Yes.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, this is a lead debate on the 2022 Appropriation Act Amendment Bill 2022 SB 1092. Mr. President, my highly...
Leader, hold on please. Secretariat, haven't you distributed the... What is going on? You should give the lead debate. Okay, do we all have the copies? Okay, Leader. Leader, you may proceed, please.
Mr. President, my highly esteemed colleagues, permit me to lead the debate on this very important bill, which seeks to amend the 2022 Appropriation Act to extend the implementation year of the Appropriation Act 2022 from the 31st December 2022 to 31st March 2023. The bill was read for the first time today, Wednesday, not Tuesday, Wednesday, 28 December 2022. As you are aware, prior appropriation acts in the recent past were passed mid-year, and as such implementation was usually extended to the following year. However, these extensions were usually covered in the Appropriation Act by a clause along the following line. In line with the with the provisions of Section 318 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, this act runs for a period of 12 months, starting from the date it comes into effect. On the contrary, the 2022 Appropriation Act Clause 12 states that in line with the provision of Section 318 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, this act runs for a period of 12 months, starting from 1st day of January to 31st day of December 2022. The proposed 2022 appropriation supplementary budget submitted to the National Assembly for consideration, as well as the recent 2022 capital release to MDS are unlikely to be utilized before 31st December 2022 due to late releases of the fund, which will lapse if the capital implementation is not extended beyond 31st December 2022. In view of the critical importance of some key projects nearing completion, it is expedient to grant the extension of the expiration clause to avoid compounding the problem of abandoned projects, given that some of the projects were not provided for in the 2023 budget. Hence, the need to extend the implementation year from 31st December 2022 to 31st March 2023. I therefore urge my colleagues to give their full support to this bill to allow full utilization of the capital releases in order to help reflect the economy. Thank you very much. God bless.
Any comments? Distinguished Senator Mohamed Adamalero.
Thank you, Mr. President, my distinguished colleagues. Mr. President, I rise to second this very important motion read by the leader. The supplementary appropriation which we are about to approve will not be implemented if we don't extend the lifespan of the budget. This is dry season now. Contractors will have enough time to mobilize to the site and achieve significant milestone. Our roads are in bad shape, particularly because of the very serious and unprecedented flooding we had this year. Quite a number of bridges are broken. Major roads have been washed away. So if we extend the lifespan of this budget, it will make the contractors to work very hard and ensure that the roads are in good shape. So this request, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, is in order. I support it, and I urge all my colleagues to do the same. Thank you.
Thank you, distinguished Senator Suswan.
Mr. President, in line with what my distinguished colleague Senator Alero have said, I rise to support the amendment sought by the President in order to enable the implementation of the 2022 budget. But Mr. President, I want to appeal to you, and of course maybe you direct the Committee on Appropriation. The worries of most senators is that our projects are not funded. So, Mr. President, by this extension, I would want to appeal to you to invite the minister concerned, of course the Minister of Finance, so that in the extension and the releases that will follow, projects, constituency projects of senators should also be funded, so that we're not just approving extension and then what we've put in the budget for our constituent is not reflected in the implementation. Otherwise, I think this is timely, and I urge our colleagues to support the extension so as to enable the implementation of the 2022 budget.
Thank you very much. Distinguished colleagues, those in favor of the motion that this bill be now read the second time, say aye. Aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. Clerk of the Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, a bill for now to amend the 2022 Appropriation Act in order to extend the implementation year from 31st December 2022 to 31st March 2023 and for related matters 2022, second reading.
A bill for an act to amend the 2022 Appropriation Act in order to extend the implementation year from 31st December 2022 to 31st March 2023 and for related matters 2022, second reading taken, and the bill is referred to the Committee of the Supply. Leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I move that the Senate do resolve into the Committee of the Whole, Committee of Supply, to consider the report.
Minority Leader.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I rise to second the motion that the Senate resolve into Committee of Supply to consider this report as so second.
Distinguished colleagues, those in favor of the motion say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Distinguished colleagues, those in favor that clause 1 stands part of the bill say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Those in favor that the explanatory memorandum stands part of the bill say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Leader of the Senate. Plenary.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I move that the Senate revert to plenary to report progress. Which one?
Short clause, short title. Short title.
Those in favor of the citation, clause 2, stand part of the bill say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I move that the Senate revert to plenary to report what transferred in the Committee of Supply.
Minority Leader.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I rise to second the motion that the Senate revert to plenary to report progress as so second.
Thank you. Those in favor of the motion that the Senate reverse plenary for the charge to report progress say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. The Senate in the Committee of Supply considered the report on the 2022 Appropriation Act Amendment Bill 2022 and approved as follows. Long title as recommended, clause 1 to 2 as recommended, explanatory memorandum as recommended. Is this a true reflection of what transpired in the Committee of the Whole? Thank you. Leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues,
Order.
I move that the Senate do suspend its Rule 78, subsection 1, in order to read the bill for a third time. I so move.
Minority Leader.
I rise to second the motion that this bill be now read a third time as so second.
Distinguished colleagues, those in favor of the motion that this bill be now read the third time say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Clerk of the Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, a bill for an act to amend the 2022 Appropriation Act in order to extend the implementation year from 31st December 2022 to 31st March 2023 and for related matters 2022. Third reading.
A bill for an act to amend the 2022 Appropriation Act in order to extend the implementation year from 31st December 2022 to 31st March 2023 and for related matters 2022 third reading taken and the bill is passed. Leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, the second order of the day is the presentation and consideration of the report of the Committee on Appropriations on the 2022 Supplementary Appropriation Bill 2022, SB 1091. Distinguished senators will recall that the request of Mr. President, Commander-in-Chief was read and referred to the committee on Wednesday, 21st December 2022. Mr. President, you may wish to invite Senator Barrow Jibril, Chairman of the committee, to move the motion for the presentation and consideration of the report.
Distinguished Senator Barrow Jibril.
Thank you, Mr. President. I am Senator Barrow Jibril. I represent Kano North in this August Senate. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I stand to move that this August Senate do receive and consider the report of the Committee on Appropriations on the 2022 Supplementary Appropriation Bill 2002 SB 1091. I so move.
I need a seconder. Distinguished Senator Clifford Odia.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I am Senator Clifford Odia. I rise to second the motion that the Senate do receive and consider the report of the Committee on Appropriation on the 2022 Supplementary Appropriation Bill 2022 SB 1091. I so second.
Distinguished colleagues, those in favor of the motion that the Senate do receive and consider the report of the Committee on Appropriations on the 2022 Supplementary Appropriation Bill 2022 say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Please, Chairman, lead the report. Chairman, you can present the report now.
Thank you, Mr. President. Once again, I'm Senator Barrow Jibril, representing Kano North. Report of the Senate Committee on Appropriations on the 2022 Supplementary Appropriation Bill. Mr. President, introduction. Mr. President, colleagues, it is my honor and privilege to present to you the report of the Senate Joint Committee on the 2022 Supplementary Appropriation Bill. You may recall that the 2022 Supplementary Appropriation Bill in the sum of 819,536,937,813 naira only, all of which are capital expenditure, was read the first time on Wednesday, the 21st day of December 2022, when the President of the Senate read the communication of the President, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, His Excellency Muhammadu Buhari, GCFR, forwarding the bill. The Senate, Mr. President, subsequently read the bill the second time and referred it to the Appropriation Committee in conjunction with the Committee on Agriculture and Rural Development, Works and Housing, and water resources for further legislative action. Objective of the bill. Fundamentally, sir, the bill seeks to, among other things, make available additional funds to cushion the effects of the 2022 flood on road infrastructure, agriculture, water infrastructure, and completion of some ongoing critical projects that have achieved about 85% completion. Legislative action. Concerning the fact that the Joint Committee was mandated to report on the bill next legislative day, it should be noted that the supplementary bill will be financed through additional domestic borrowings, which will raise the 2022 budget to 8.17 trillion naira only, and a deficit stroke GDP up to 4.43%. The Joint Committee sat and acted on the bill as mandated by this August Senate. Observation. The committee observed as follows. 1. The effects of the 2022 flood across the country and its attendant consequences on our roads, bridges, farmlands, and the water sector necessitated the supplementary appropriation bill as requested. 2. MDAs involved in the supplementary appropriation bill requests are: 1. Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development; 2. Federal Ministry of Works and Housing; 3. Federal Ministry of Water Resources. Recommendation. The Appropriation Committee and the Joint Committee, having considered members of the Joint Committee, having considered the detailed provision of the bill, the contribution of the subcommittees, and the general impact it will make in ameliorating the havoc caused by flood across the country, has recommended the following for the various MDAs. 1. Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development; 2. Federal Ministry of Works and Housing; 3. Federal Capital Territory; 4. Federal Ministry of Water Resources. The committee hereby recommends that the Senate do consider and approve as follows: a bill for an act to authorize the issue from the Consolidated Revenue Fund of the federal government the total sum of 819,537,937,813 naira only. Broken as follows: 1. Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development, 69 billion. Federal Ministry of Works and Housing, 704 billion. Federal Capital Territory, 30 billion. Federal Ministry of Water Resources, 15.5 billion. Conclusion. I wish to thank members of the committee for working around the clock in order to meet the time given by the Senate to process this bill. I also respectfully thank the leadership of the Senate for the support and cooperation accorded the Joint Committee in processing this bill. Mr. President, I so submit.
Distinguished Senator Smart Ademi.
Mr. President, I rise to speak briefly and to commend the presentation of what the Chairman of Appropriation has just presented. I think this extension and this supplementary is a worthwhile attempt to make sure that projects, especially capital projects, are executed. And more importantly, Mr. President, I went through this document and I can see that this proposal is a project that touches the nooks and corners of this country. More importantly, I can see that this project that is being proposed, the capital projects, are projects that will help in guaranteeing security and improving the socio-economic development of rural areas. Because to me, Mr. President, went through these documents some few days ago, and I pray that all that is being proposed can be achieved. More so, this is a project that is being proposed, budget that is being proposed to cover including rural areas, which have not actually received good attention in previous budget. I think that the extension to will complement the vision and the proposal that we have. And I want to urge my colleagues that if we take a look at it in details, we'll see that what is being proposed here cut across virtually every state of this country, more so the people we represent. Personally, I can see quite a number of roads in my territory that have been begging for attention over the years being proposed. And I'm sure the same thing goes for quite a number of my colleagues here. So I think, Mr. President, this should be supported. I so submit, Mr.
Senator Mohammed Ndume.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm Senator Mohammed Ali Ndume, representing Borno South. Mr. President, I agree swiftly reacting to the Senate President is the reality of what we are doing. It is today that this Senate has considered extending the budget by 90 days. 90 days. This budget of over 800 billion, even if approved, how realistic is it going to be? By the time we process this, and the due process that is required in budget implementation or contract execution cannot be circumvented. If that is the case, assuming we pass it today, we have 120 days to implement. No, 90 in the next year. But we have this, okay, it's 90 days. 90 days, Mr. President, for advertisement, for selection of contractors, and even if it's agreed that some of the projects are ongoing, let's agree that it is ongoing. That means that these monies will have to be spent within 90 days. 90 days. It's not possible. Let's not deceive ourselves. Why don't we amend the 2023 budget, take care of these projects so that they will have 12 months of implementation? We are passing the budget most likely today. Now, this whole thing that the committee did can now be incorporated into, can be considered as supplementary budget or budget amendment for 2023. That is more realistic. But if we want to go ahead, so be it. But it is not going to be realistic.
Okay. Senator Adiola.
Thank you, Mr. President. Very distinguished colleague. Let me start by saying that I also join others in commending the committee for their timely intervention in saying that we have this report today. I want my colleague to also look at. He said the effect of the 2022 flood across the country and its attendant consequences on our road, bridges and farmland and the water sector necessitated this supplementary appropriation bill. The reason is clearly stated, and it's for emergency. And every country of the world that is involved in this perennial flooding always make provision for emergencies to attend to all of this. And to my colleague who have raised issue concerning the implementation of this budget, even in 2023 budgets, which we have 2022 budget, which we are currently implementing, there are projects there that will last 2 years. There are projects there that will last 3 years. And we cannot say because of the 90 days extension of this year's budget, we should jettison this provision which we have provided to take care of an emergency.
I want to say this, my dear colleague. 2023 budget, yes, is around the corner to be passed. But in the same vein, 2022 is still ongoing. And all that have happened in 2022. And if there are new sources to intervene on the plight of our people who have been involved in this perennial flooding, I think it will not be out of place. It shows how sensitive this government is. So we should not look at this budget from the point of 3 months of implementation, but rather that this is project that they can commence and it can extend even to next year. And we still have 2022 project that would dovetail into 2024. This is an emergency that we are taking care of here, and I want us to see it in that light. Thank you.
Okay. Senator Joy Thompson Sekiwo.
Mr. Senior President, my colleague, I sincerely am Senator George Thompson Sekiwo. The issue on the passage of the supplementary budget. If it is not done, the bad effect is on us and our people. Now it has come before us. We are talking about timing and implementation. 2022 budget, I'm sure it's over 20 trillion. And then we are implementing it in how many months? 12 months. They're implementing. This is under 1 trillion. And if the issue is to implement it in 3 months, maybe it may not be enough. But if you travel to Bayelsa and saw the devastation the flood caused, you will only agree with any person, any kind of support that they want to give to the people. So, Mr. Senior President, maybe the timing is very short. Maybe what we will have done, instead of passing the earlier extension we did, we should have taken this one, maybe extended to maybe the 5 months, the remaining 5 months of the lifetime of this administration. I am sure more things will be done. But I think we are not close yet. If we are implementing it, and then we have the hiccup, we can come back here and extend the time by 1 or 2 months. So as far as I'm concerned, let's give succor to our people. People have suffered a lot. So I think we should pass it without overflowing the issue. Thank you, Mr. President.
I think, distinguished colleagues, that's the best spot to stop our debate, because I think he captured the, and even, just hold on please, and even when Senator Ndime made his contribution, he didn't say jettison, he said his concern, and I think his concern has been addressed. So those in favor that this bill be now read the second time, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. Clerk of the Senate. Excuse me, please. The single Senator Uche Penefe, you are distinguished. Please, distinguished colleagues, just hold on, please. Distinguished Senator, this is not. Excuse me, please. This is not the conduct that is expected of you. If you have an issue, you don't have to shout like this, please. Clerk of the Senate. Leader of the Senate, Committee of Supply.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I move that the Senate resolve into Committee of Supply to consider the report. I so move. No, yes, we will show you. Order.
Minority Leader, Committee of Supply.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I rise to second that the Senate resolve into Committee of Supply to consider this report. I so second.
Distinguished colleagues, those in favor of the motion that the Senate resolve into Committee of the Supply to consider the report say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Distinguished colleagues, what we consider is on page 1. Page 1 of the bill. Distinguished colleagues, we will be on page 1. Page 1. Ministry page 1. Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development 69,247,175,770 naira. Federal Ministry of Works and Housing 704,789,762,043 naira. Federal Capital Territory Administration 30 billion naira. Federal Ministry of Water Resources 15 billion 500 million naira. Aggregate total is 819 billion 536 million 937,813 naira only. Those in favor that this schedule stand part of the bill say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Leader of the Senate, Plenary.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I move that the Senate revert to plenary to report progress. I so move.
Distinguished colleagues, I rise to second the motion that the Senate revert to plenary to report progress. I so second.
Thank you. Distinguished colleagues, those in favor of the motion that the Senate reverse plenary for the child to report progress, say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. The Senate, in the Committee of Supply, considered the report of the Committee on Appropriations on the 2022 Supplementary Appropriation Bill and approved as follows. Federal Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development as recommended, Federal Minister of Works and Housing as recommended, Federal Capital Territory Administration as recommended, Federal Minister of Water Resources as recommended, aggregate expenditure as recommended. Is this a true reflection of what transpired in the Committee of Supply? Thank you. Leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I move that the bill be now the third time. I so move.
Minority Leader.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I raise the second motion that this bill be now read the third time. I so second.
Distinguished colleagues, those in favor of the motion that this bill be now read the third time, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. Clerk of the Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, a bill for an act to authorize the issue from the Consolidated Revenue Fund, CFR, a total sum of 819 billion, 536 million, 937,813 naira only, is for contribution to the Development Fund for capital expenditure for the year ending on the 31st day of December 2022, third reading.
Okay. All right, thank you. Distinguished colleagues, a bill for an act to authorize the issue from the Consolidated Revenue Fund CFR the total sum of 819 billion 536 million 937,813 naira only is for contribution to the Development Fund for capital expenditure for the year ending on the 31st day of December 2022. Is that so? Clerk. Is it 31st day of December or 31st day of March? Huh? Of March. So we should correct it, please. Yeah, for the year ending on the 31st day of March 2023. Those in favor say aye. Those against say nay. As have it. I'll read it again to reflect the March. A bill for an act to authorize the issue from the Consolidated Revenue Fund the total sum of 819 billion 536 million 937,813 naira only is for contribution to the Development Fund for capital expenditure for the year ending on the 31st day of March 2023. The third reading taken and the bill is passed. Thank you. Leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, with reference to Order 1B, so that the Senate can always...
Leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, using Order 1B, I would like to go straight to the next item on the agenda, which is on the order paper. Yes.
Why are you skipping? Report. Chairman, Finance.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I would prefer to take the finance bill for now. Immediately after the finance bill, I will take the report on the Ways and Means that is currently being printed upstairs. In the next 10-20, it will be ready.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Go ahead, leader.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, the sixth order of the day is the presentation and consideration of the report of the Committee on Finance on the 2023 Federal Inland Revenue Service Budget. Mr. President, you may wish to invite Senator Adiola Solomon Olamilekon to move the motion for the Senate to receive and consider the report of the committee. Okay.
Distinguished Senator Adiola Solomon Olamilekon.
Thank you, Mr. President. Distinguished colleague, may I move that this Senate do receive the report of the Committee on Finance on the report on the Finance Bill 2022. Mr. President, distinguished colleague, I so move.
Distinguished colleagues, I need a seconder, please. Distinguished Senator Isa Jibrin.
Your Excellency, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I am Isa Jibrin, representing Kogi East. I rise to second the motion that the Senate do receive and consider the report of the Committee on Finance on the Finance Bill 2022. I so second.
Distinguished colleagues, those in favor of the motion that the Senate do receive and consider the report of the Committee on Finance on the Finance Bill 2022 say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Chairman, you may lead the report, please. Chief Whip, that side, my left is a bit noisy. You may present the report, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. President. Distinguished colleague, Adiola Solomon Olamilekon. Mr. President, distinguished colleague, report of the Senate Committee on Finance on the Finance Bill 2022. Introduction. The Senate at the plenary session on Tuesday, 20th December 2022, read the letter of Mr. President presenting the Finance Bill 2022.
Secretariat, where are the reports? So who doesn't have? Secretariat, please.
Excellency, no, you are my leader. C'est bien bon, Milé. Dis Jimmy, allez gagner. Okay. Mr. President, can I go ahead? Yes. Yeah. Mr. President, the bill seeks to support the implementation of the federal budget of fiscal consolidation and transition by proposing key reforms to specific taxation, custom and excise, fiscal and other relevant laws. The Senate at the sitting on Tuesday, 20th December, read the Finance Bill 2022 the first and second time and referred same to the Committee on Finance for further legislative action. The 9 acts to be amended under the Finance Act 2022 contain a total of
28 clauses, and the committee immediately swung into action, held several meetings and a public hearing with members and critical stakeholders. 2.0 are the membership of the committee. is the list of the acts to be amended in the finance bill, which include the capital gain tax, the company income tax, custom and excise, personal income, petroleum profit tax, stamp duty act, value added tax, corrupt practices, public procurement, and so on. 4.0 are the methodology that was used The committee adopted the following procedure to carry out the assignment. 1. Interaction with the sponsor of the bill, the Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, to shed more light on the general principle of the bill. 2. Request for stakeholders' input, comment, and observation on the bill. 3. Conduct a public hearing to enable stakeholders and interested members of the public make oral presentation on the desirability or otherwise of the proposed amendment. 4. Review of related existing legislation to meet international best practices. And 5. Review of stakeholders' input and consideration of the draft report. Observation of the objective of the bill. The bill provides for A. The enhancement of tax equity by bringing more economic sector into the tax net and ensuring a fairer distribution of revenue received to all tiers of government. B. Respond to climate change through incentive to support utilization of gas as a transition fuel, as well as disincentive for gas flaring and venting. C. Support job creation through sustained economic growth in partnership with key international developmental and other agencies. D. Implementing fundamental corporate taxes incentives reforms. And E. Enhance revenue generation and tax administration through various fiscal and other measures. Public hearing is contained in 6.0. 7 is the committee observation. The committee observed as follows. Under the company income tax, that the amendment of section 14, subsection 5 of CETA will improve voluntary tax compliance for non-resident companies carrying on business of transport by sea or air in a multiple jurisdiction as a means to expand the tax act, improve tax collection and tax compliance in the maritime sector. B. Also, the amendment of section 26 will bring the act in line with the Nigerian climate change and the green growth commitment at the COP26 and COP27. C. It will also promote the reduction of gas flaring by incentivizing winning and commercial utilization of both associated and not associated gas. Medium and large companies utilization associated and non-associated gas henceforth shall benefit from the investment allowance on their qualifying incentive for this purpose. D. Amendment of section 32 is in line with Strategic Revenue Growth Initiative (SRGI), the rationalization of tax expenditure advances the federal government's ongoing fiscal policy to streamline adequate tax incentive by replacing blunt tax allowances with more targeted effective tax incentive. 2. The tax equity reform. The amendment will combat tax evasion and encourage aggressive tax planning practices by utilizing ICT tools and international tax best practices to assess taxpayers to tax on a fair and reasonable basis. It will also ensure that under tax or on tax sectors, taxpayers, etc., are brought into the tax net in line with the extant laws and regulation. 3. Revenue generation and tax administration. This will help to complement the ease of doing business and other reforms by enhancing tax administration. It equally introduces targeted fiscal and non-fiscal reform to amend, address, and cure defects in existing tax and non-tax laws regulation. 4. Public procurement and anti-corruption. The amendment of Section 16 subsection 1B of the Public Procurement Act seeks to make the Bureau for Public Procurement more proactive, such that procurement process starts immediately the budget is approved, pending the release of fund. This will minimize the delay in budget implementation and enable government implement budget as passed by the National Assembly. 5. The Tertiary Education Fund. It is pertinent to ensure appropriate and reasonable sources of funding to improve researches and infrastructure in our tertiary institution in line with the decision of the National Assembly and commitment of the President as international bodies on improving the funding of the educational sector from 2.5 to 3% as acceptable benchmark. The FRS Establishment Act. The Act seeks to change the name of Federal Inland Revenue Service to Nigerian Revenue Service. The board shall be headed by a chairman separate from the management. The management will be headed by a chief executive who shall be known as Commissioner General, and this will enhance corporate governance in the administration of the service. Like what we currently have, we have the chairman board of internal revenue as the chairman of the board and also as the executive, as the MD of the FRS. But with this new introduction, the chairman, the board is separated from the management of the of FRS. So, and we have a separate chairman appointed to head the board, while the chairman now will be referred to as the Commissioner General in charge of the service. Recommendation. The committee recommends that Section 14, subsection 5 of CETA be amended. Section 26 of CETA be amended. Section 3 of CGT Act be amended as proposed. Section 16(1)(b) of the Procurement Act be amended. The rate of tertiary education trust fund increase from 2.5 to that also be acceptable benchmark. 6. That Section 1, 3, 63, 69, and 70 of FRS Act be amended to enhance corporate governance in the administration of the service. That, and also thank the entire member of the committee and staff of the Secretariat who work assiduously to ensure timely completion of this report. Mr. President, distinguished colleague, I so submit.
Any comments? Distinguished Senator Gabriel Swam.
Yes.
All the same, it's okay. It's like Chairman, the Distinguished Senator address the chair, leave him alone.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'm Dr. Gabriel Suswam, representing Benue Northeast. Mr. President, let me commend my chairman for a job well done. We attended the public hearing where all issues pertaining to some of the amendment hearing captured were raised by members, and the Minister of Finance, together with other relevant personnel who were there, comprehensively addressed those issues. And the committee was satisfied with some of the answers they gave. And I think it is predicated on that this report is before us for consideration. Mr. President, we need more revenue. And the only way that we can achieve more revenue is for us to amend some of the sections that were proposed for amendment, which the chairman have comprehensively captured here. And so may I urge that distinguished colleagues should support this amendment so that we can attain more revenue for us to be able to implement even the supplementary budget that we've extended till March. without approving this, we could run into difficulties on the revenue side. So, Mr. President, I so support.
Senator Eddie Young.
Thank you, Mr. President, for this opportunity. I want to sincerely appreciate this opportunity. I'm Senator Eddie Young, representing the very good people of Plateau North. Mr. President, one of the amendments of the existing act that is so dear to me is out of the Tertiary Education Trust Fund, which has been upgraded from 2.5% to 3%. I believe this strongly, Mr. President, that this will address some of the funding challenges of our universities and tertiary institutions, and that through this, it will go a long way to bring stability to the university system. I therefore support very strongly this very amendment of the existing law that will empower the education, our educational institutions, particularly the tertiary level, to be better funded and to address the funding challenges that have led to a lot of restiveness, the ASU and other things that have happened. I therefore say this is a welcome development. Thank you very much.
Senator Ibrahim Yahya.
Thank you, Mr. President, distinguished colleague. Mr. President, my name is Ibrahim Yahya. I represent Kuala Central Senatorial District. My comment is very brief. I join my colleagues to thank the chairman for the report. I was also at the public hearing. Mr. President, my little comment is on the FRIS Act amendment regarding the specific definition of the qualifications, terms and so on of the chairman. Because as at the time we were considering the bill at the committee, the redraft has not come. I've asked today, I've not seen the draft. So I want, when we're in the committee, to carefully look at this. Because at the committee level, you have the proposal sent by the president, it wasn't there, but we agreed to it at the committee. But we need to be able to be very clear so there will be no conflict. Because currently it's a mixed function, but we are separating it. So we need to be able to provide through legislation specific guide as to who should be the chairman, so that as the bill will be, or the act when it's signed is being implemented, there will be a clear guidance to the president who is the appointee. Thank you, Mr. President.
Lastly, Senator Barrow Jibrin.
Thank you, Mr. President. Barrow Jibrin, Kano North. Mr. President, permit me to commend the committee for a job well done. The report is well put together. I am delighted, particularly the Public Procurement Act, which is going to be amended to allow for the implementation of the budget to begin immediately after the passing of the budget. Not waiting for funds to be released. I think immediately the budget is passed, pending when the funds, funds will start coming into the coffers of agencies or MDs or ministries. This will allow for the quick implementation, expedited implementation process of our budget. Probably, if I had this kind of situation, we would have requested for extension of the budget. I'm also delighted about the change of organogram of IFRS. I think this will really put FRS in a way that it will perform very well. The corporate arrangement will be better in terms of the achievement. The FRS will begin to churn out after this implementation. After this amendment has been done. Mr. President, to submit.
Distinguished colleagues, those in favor Leader of the Senate, Committee of the Whole, please.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I move that the Senate resolve into the Committee of the Whole to consider the report.
Minority Leader.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I rise to second the motion ably moved by the Senate Leader. I so second.
Those in favor that the Senate resolves into Committee of the Whole to consider the report, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. Okay. Distinguished colleagues, I hope we all have the copies. Okay. We start from page 1. What is wrong with this secretariat? We'll start from page 5, isn't it? We'll start from page 5. Those who vote at clause 1, clause 2, no. Clause 3, clause 4, and clause 5. Stand part of the bill, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. Clause 6 is on page 15. Those who vote at clause 6, clause 7, clause 8, clause 9, and clause 10. Stand part of the bill, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. Clause 11. Those who are at clause 11, clause 12 on page 34, clause 13, clause 14, clause 15. Stand part of the bill, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. Those who are at clause 16 on page 38, and that's an amendment to section 13. Those who are at clause 16, clause 17, clause 18, clause 19, and clause 20, stand part of the bill, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. Clause 21, on page 46. Those who are at clause 21, clause 22, clause 23, clause 24, clause 25, stand part of the bill, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. Clause 26 is on page 53. Those who are at clause 26, 27, 28, 29, and clause 30, stand part of the bill, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. Those who are at clause 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, stand part of the bill, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. Clause 36 is on page 78. Those who are at clause 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, and 42 stand part of the bill, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. Those in favor of the short title stands part of the bill, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. Those in favor of the long title on page 1 stands part of the bill, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. Leader of the Senate, plenary.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I move that the Senate revert to plenary for the chair to report progress.
Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I second the motion as moved by the leader. I so second.
Distinguished colleagues, those in favor that the Senate reverse plenary for the chair to report progress, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. The Senate in the Committee of the Whole considered the report of the Committee on Finance on the Finance Bill 2022 and approved as follows. Long title as recommended, clause 1 to 42 as recommended, long title as recommended. Is this a true reflection of what transpired in the Committee of the Whole? Thank you. Leader of the Senate, third reading.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I move that the bill be now read the third time. I so move.
Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. To second the motion that the bill be read the third time.
Distinguished colleagues, those in favor of the motion that this bill be now read a third time, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. Clerk of the Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, a bill for an act to amend relevant tax, excises, and duty statutes in line with the macroeconomic policy reforms of the federal government, to amend and to make further provisions in specific laws in connection with the public financial management of the Federation and for related matters 2022, third reading.
A bill for an act to amend the relevant tax, excises, and duty statutes in line with the macroeconomic policy reforms of the federal government, to amend and to make further provisions in specific laws in connection with public financial management of the Federation and for related matters 2022, third reading taken, and the bill is passed. Chairman Finance, what happened to concessions and waivers?
Mr. President, distinguished colleague, what we have on the concession and waivers is a bill that has been sent to me for consideration, which is separate from the Finance Act, and that was why I'm treating it separately. And by the time we resume or we return, that will be submitted before the Senate.
Okay, because I think we are losing revenue in that area. So we really need to look at that segment. If we are looking for revenue, we could get maybe $1 trillion or even more. Thank you. Leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, the fifth order of the day is the presentation and consideration of report of the Committee on Power on the transmission of FGN Power Company budget for 2022. Mr. President, you may wish to invite Senator Seswan Gabriel Tohua to move the motion for the Senate to receive and consider the report of the committee.
Is the report means? No, but he has already called power. So after this, power. After power, the words are means. The Songwe Senator Gabriel Suswam.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, my name is Dr. Gabriel Suswam, Benue Northeast. Mr. President, may I move that the Senate do receive the report on FGM Power Company Limited budget 2022 budget. Mr. President, I so move.
I need a seconder. Distinguished Senator Ahmad Babakaita, Katsina North.
Thank you, Mr. President. I remain Ahmed Babakita. I rise to second the bill ably moved by the Chairman Power.
Distinguished colleagues, those in favor of the motion that the Senate do receive and consider the report of the Committee on Power on the transmission of the FGN Power Company budget for 2022, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. You may present the report, Chairman.
Yeah, Mr. President, the Senate at the sitting of Wednesday, 14 December 2022, considered an executive communication from Mr. President Muhammadu Buhari, GCFR, on FGN Power Company Limited budget for 2022, aimed to fast-track the implementation of the Presidential Power Initiative and refers SEM to the Committee on Power for further legislative action. The budget proposal of 95 billion 665,187 naira only was presented as budget for FGM Power Company Limited. See attached details broken down as presented in the report. Mr. President, I'd like to give a background to FGM Power. You will recall that at the early stage of this administration, Mr. President visited Germany and had an MOU with the German government where it was agreed that Siemens should interfere in the transmission and distribution in the power sector in the country. The implementation of that agreement led to an agreement through an SPV, a special purpose vehicle, that culminated in the power company acting as that special purpose vehicle for the implementation of the agreement between the German government and the Nigerian government to assist us in the transmission and distribution of power in the country. For the Germans to come in, proper arrangement needs to be done because Nigeria needs to also have counterpart funding of about 15%. And they needed to put on ground some activities for Siemens to come in. That is what has led to this budget. The President has, I think, approved the release of some money so that the Nigerian part will start and then lay the foundation for the agreement to become effective starting this year, 2022. So this whole budget is about the implementation of the Siemens agreement between the German government and the Nigerian government, Mr. President. So there's nothing that is in it outside of what you've seen in the provisions of the budget. I will urge my distinguished colleagues to support the passage of this budget as presented. Mr. President, I so present. Yeah, that's all.
Distinguished Senator Takumbo Abiru.
It's okay. Thank you very much, Mr. President, and my distinguished colleagues. My name is Senator Tokumbo Abiru from Lagos East. I want to thank my colleague for this presentation of the power company's budget. But I also like him to clarify, particularly on page 2, where he profiled the revenue sources and the application of the revenue. Under the sources of funds, you stated here that you have about 46.7 billion that will appear to be on ground. However, you went further under your note C to say that there will be loans. So I'm wondering the terms of the loans. Again, how will the loan be repaid? So I think that clarification is necessary so as to know how you are funding these operations. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you.
Distinguished Senator Omar Adamalero.
Thank you, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues. My name is Mohammed Adamalero, representing Kebbi Central. I rise to support the passage of this very important bill that has to do with the funding of FGM Power Company. Mr. President, what we are talking about is investment of well over $1.5 billion. And FGN is supposed to give counterpart funding. And I think the chairman has not made it very clear. This amount of 95 billion 261,665,187 naira each counterpart funding. The main money is coming from Germany. I think this is just 15% of the total expenditure that is going to be incurred to improve the generation and distribution of power supply in Nigeria. Mr. President, we are all interested in seeing that the power supply in Nigeria has improved tremendously. Lack of power supply has caused a lot of misfortune in Nigeria. It has caused several companies to relocate to neighboring countries like Ghana, where the power supply is uninterrupted and it's cheap. So if we restore uninterrupted power supply, it will attract investment, particularly in manufacturing sector. It will reflate the economy, and companies have no reason to go out of Nigeria to produce and bring into Nigeria. So, Mr. President, this is a very important budget, and the Senate and indeed the National Assembly should approve it expeditiously so that they can pass.
Order!
The whip! Attention please, the whip! So, Mr. President, this is a very important budget. It's just counterpart funding of what the FGN is supposed to give. And we should support it, and we should pass it expeditiously. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any comments? Distinguished colleagues, we look at the recommendation on page 3. The recommendation on page 3 of the report. The committee recommends that the FGM Power Company Limited's 2022 budget of 95 billion 261 million 665,187 naira be approved, minor adjustments by the committee to enhance the activities of the company. What is that? What is minor adjustments?
Mr. President, there is no minor adjustment actually. What did happen was that the budget they brought had less. When we called the guy who is acting as the MD, he said that for the provisions of transformers, these MVA transformers, that we needed to adjust money from one part to another.
But I don't think you have to mention any adjustment. This is your job. If you did it, you didn't have to say you did minor adjustment. Yeah. Yeah, I think for our records, because somebody will ask a question anytime you see with the minor adjustment, what are the minor adjustments? So we don't need that minor adjustment thing. Be approved, just like the minority will suggesting. Be approved, full stop. We forget about the minor adjustments. Yes, Senator Abiru.
The chairman did not address the clarification that I sought for on the loan and the repayment source. He didn't address it at all.
Okay, chairman, do.
The other sources of funding, which is loan, you know, the German government are going to provide 85% of the monies that we need. This has already been approved. So for purpose of clarity, we have to capture that loan there to show that we're only paying 15% as against 85% of what the Germans are bringing. We had already approved this under what Senator Odia had presented among the borrowing that we did. So it's just to show that this is sponsored with the German loan. That is why it is there. Are we okay? Yeah.
It's all right. It's okay. Distinguished colleagues, those in favor of the recommendation, those in favor of the recommendation as amended, say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, the first order of the day is the presentation and consideration of the report on the Committee on Finance on the Financial Bill 2022, SB 1087. Distinguished senators will recall that the bill was referred to the committee on Tuesday, 20th December 2022. Mr. President, you may wish to invite Senator Adiola Solomon Olamileko, Chairman of the committee, to move the motion for the presentation and the consideration of the report.
Distinguished Senator Adiola Solomon Olamileko, Lagos West.
For now. Thank you, Mr. President. Very distinguished colleague. Once again, Adiola Solomon Olamileko. Mr. President, may I move that this Senate do receive and consider the report of the Senate Committee on Finance on the report of restructuring of ways and means advances 2023. Mr. President, distinguished colleague, I so move.
Distinguished Senator Issa Jibrin.
Your Excellency, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I am Issa Jibrin, representing Kogi East. Mr. President, I rise to second the motion that the Senate do receive and consider the report of the Committee on Finance on the approval of Ways and Means 2022. I so second.
Point of order, Senator Betty Akpiafi.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, my point of order is a constitutional order. Mr. President, Section 81, 82 of the Nigerian Constitution, 81 to 83, states clearly how expenditure can be made by the government. One of it is through budgeting. the next is through supplementary budget as provided in the Constitution. Now, I don't know where the law comes from, where we have to spend money or restructure expenditures through ways and means.
Distinguished, excuse me please, just let me say something. There is nothing before the Senate now. There is nothing. Technically, the report needs to be presented and then you can raise your issue.
Mr. President, the report cannot be presented because we have no laws in the land of Nigeria that covers anything called with.
No, why the report should be presented is for us to know what happened. And then you can raise your point of order.
Why are
the distinguished Senator Betty Apiafi, I rule you out of order for now. Senator Adiola, you present, just hold on please. I'll rule you out of order. You will speak, but we need, listen, yes, you will represent them quite okay, but what I'm saying is we don't have anything at the moment for you to even observe. No. He lays the report, you raise your point of order. No, you lay the report, please.
Point of order.
Point of order, Senator Smart Ademi.
Point of order. Point of order. Mr. President, point of order. Opposition.
Distinguished colleagues, Minority Leader, please let me clarify something. I am not stopping anyone from raising observations, point of order, or commenting. But we have to have the report before us, before we. Senator Smart Ademi.
There is a need to be guided with the point of order 7, 8, and 9. And I read, Mr. President, it shall be out of order to use offensive and insulting language in this chamber. Order 8, no senator shall put improper motives to any other senator. A senator desiring to speak shall raise his hand in his place, and if called upon, shall rise and address his observation to the Senate President who presides over the chamber. So, the President, you have to respect, to sit down, your opposition, if because of political your party is dying, you don't come and bend the hand on us here.
Okay. I am Senator Smart Ademi, minority leader. Thank you very much, distinguished colleagues. Let me, Senator Adeola, please sit down. Let me reiterate what I said. At the moment, we don't have the report. When the report is presented, anyone who has observation, objection, comments can do so. But let's have the report before us, and then we can raise whether constitutional order or our standing orders. This is Parliament. Nobody is going to be stopped from saying what he or she thinks. is appropriate. So let it not appear like I'm stopping people. No, I'm not. So it's just for us to be orderly. So, Senator Adiola, please present the report. Point of order, Senator Ndume.
Thank you, Mr. President. My point of order, Mr. President, is on Order 9. And let me read. Privileges are the rights enjoyed by senators collectively and by members of the Senate individually, conferred by the Legislative House's Powers and Privileges Act of 2 laws and the Federation 1990, and other statuses by practice of precedent. Whenever a matter of privilege arises, it should be taken immediately. Mr. President, we came into this chamber this morning, and documents that we are supposed to use for the day is supposed to be distributed to us. We have considered many. Now, it is now that the chairman of Finance Committee distributed 4-page report. It's 4 pages with the signatures, including the signatures of the senators, asking us to consider 22 trillion. How about? We are senators. Mr. President.
Senator Ndume, it's the same thing. Please, you may sit down. It's distinguished colleagues, Senator Ndume, he gave us the report. He hasn't presented the report. I will urge us to be patient, let him present the report, and then all these observations we are talking about, we can talk about them. No. If he presents, we can see either the weaknesses in what he is presenting, or we can now make our observations, whether constitutional or standing orders or whatever. But at the moment, he has not even presented. So, Senator Adiola, please present the report.
Hello, Mr. President. Mr. President, very distinguished colleague, Adiola Solomon Olamilekan, representing Lagos West. The report of the Senate Committee on Finance on the restructuring of the Ways and Means advances request by Mr. President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Mr. President, before I go ahead to present my report, sir, I've laid the report. The report is here. Are you sure they need more report? Sorry, I've laid it. The report is there. I've laid it. Thank you. Mr. President, distinguished colleague, I share in the sentiment of some of my colleagues who has raised this observation, because this is not one instrument that we are used to as our Senate. But let me place it on record that Ways and Means are windows that are used by the government when there is need for government or cash intervention by the federal government. Yes. So, Mr. President, I don't want us to exercise any fear about what is contained in this. It's normal. We should even commend the government for bringing this information out. It's here. The Senate at the sitting on the 22nd December 2023, read the letter of Mr. President on the restructurings of the ways and means advances, and the first same to the Committee on Finance, Appropriation, Works, Water Resources, Agric and Rural Development. The ways and means advances by the Central Bank of Nigeria to the federal government has been a funding option available to the federal government to cater for a short-term or emergency finance to fund delayed government expected cash receipt or fiscal deficit. The ways and means balance as at 19 December 2022 stood at the sum of 22,703,774,306 naira 90 kobo. Mr. President, scrutinizing the ways and means balances, the committee engaged the Minister of Finance and also representative of the Central Bank of Nigeria. The Central Bank governor was unavoidably absent, is out of the country. Mr. President, the committee also requested that the detailed breakdown of this sum of 22 trillion naira be forwarded to the committee, as these balances of 22 trillion naira span across over 10 years, and they have agreed to forward same document to the committee on or before Friday of this week. Mr. President, distinguished colleague, observation. The committee observed that, one, that there should be adequate briefing by the government whenever the ways and means advances is being sought. Two, that the restructuring of the 22 trillion 719 billion 703,774,306 naira 90 kobo is in the interest of the federal government, as it lessens the repayment burden on the federal government debt. Three, that the government should improve the synergy between its monetary and fiscal policy. Recommendation. One, that the restructuring of 23 trillion 719 billion 703,774,300.
Chief Whip, please, the chamber is noisy.
Order. Opportunity to serve in this capacity. Mr. President, the breakdown for the 1 trillion includes 69 billion 247,107.
The Swedish colleagues, please allow him to land. Allow him to land, please. You should round up. You should round up, please. Senator Yusuf. Point of order, Senator. Just hold on, please. Point of order, Senator Sekibo. Distinguished colleagues, Distinguished colleagues. Distinguished colleagues. Well, I'm sure we need to keep quiet to listen to. No. Just hold on. Distinguished Senator Betty Abiafi, please take your seat. Distinguished colleagues, there is no observation, but let me assure you this. Whoever wants to speak will speak. There's no need to shout. Whoever wants to speak will speak, but we need to listen.
Mr. Senior President, my distinguished colleagues, I am coming on conditional point of orders. Section 80, Section 83, Section 111, Section 13.1, and then Section 38 of the CBN Act. And then I'll go to Order 10. So if you allow me, let me take in the sequence.
You will proceed.
Section 80 of the 1999 Constitution as amended.
Order, please. Let's hear him.
Let's give it order, please.
All revenues or other monies raised or received by the Federation, not being revenue or other monies payable under this Constitution or any act of the National Assembly into any other public fund of the Federation established for a specific purpose shall be paid into and form one consolidated revenue fund of the Federation. 2. No money shall be withdrawn from the consolidated revenue fund of the Federation except to meet expenditure that is charged upon the fund by this Constitution, or where the issue of those monies have been authorized by an Appropriation Act, Supplementary Act, or an Act passed in pursuance of Section 81 of this Constitution. 3. No money shall be withdrawn from any public fund of the Federation other than the Consolidated Revenue Fund of the Federation unless the issue of those monies has been authorized by an Act of the National Assembly. Section 84. No money shall be withdrawn from the Consolidated Revenue Fund or any other fund of the Federation except in the manner prescribed by the National Assembly. Except in the manner prescribed by the National Assembly. Section 83. The National Assembly may by law make provision for the establishment of a contingency fund for the Federation and for authorizing the President, if satisfied that there has been arisen an urgent and unforeseen need for expenditure for which no other provision exists, to make advances from the fund to meet the needs. 83.2. Where any advance is made in accordance with the provision of this section, a supplementary estimate shall be presented and a supplementary appropriation bill shall be introduced as soon as possible for the purpose of replacing the amount so advanced. As soon as possible for the purpose of replacing the amount so advanced. Section 111. Mr. President, this Constitution is supreme.
and its provisions shall allow binding force on all authorities and persons throughout the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Now, please, let's take 13.1. Section 13. It shall be the duty and responsibility of all of the...
Point of order, leader.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, in accordance with our Order 8, subsection 3, I move that we extend our sitting beyond 2 o'clock. I so move.
Minority leader.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I rise to second the motion that this Senate continue sitting beyond 2 o'clock. I so second.
Distinguished colleagues, those in favor of the motion that the Senate sits beyond 2 p.m. say aye. Those against say nay. Ayes have it. Well, continue, Senator Sekibo.
Section 13. It shall be the duty and responsibility of all organs of government and of all authorities and persons exercising legislative, executive, or judicial powers to conform to, observe, and apply the provisions of this chapter of this Constitution. To observe and apply. Mr. President, we go to the CBN Act, Section 38. It says this: notwithstanding the provisions of Section 34D of this Act, bank may be granted temporary advances to the federal government in respect of temporary deficiency of budget revenue at such rates of interest of these. 2. The total amount of such advances outstanding shall not at any time exceed 5% of the previous year's actual revenue of the federal government. All advances made pursuant to this section shall be repaid A, as soon as possible, and shall in any event be repayable by the end of the federal government financial year in which they are granted. And if such advances remain unpaid at the end of the year, the power of the bank to grant such further advances in any subsequent year shall not be exercisable unless the outstanding advances have been paid. Mr. President, I can refer also to many other areas, but for lack of time. All right, as my colleagues wishes. In such form as the bank may determine, provided that no repayment shall take the form of a promissory note or such other promises to pay, at a future date, or securitization by way of issuance of treasury bills, bonds, certificate, or other forms of security which is required to be underwritten by the bank. Mr. President, having said this, please give me a standing for that. Having said this, permit me to take you to Order 9 and 10. Order 9 is on privileges. Let me read 10.
You may proceed.
Any senator may rise at any time to speak upon a matter of privilege suddenly arising, and he shall be prepared to move without notice a motion declaring that a contempt or breach of privilege has been committed, or referring the matter to the Committee on Ethics and Privileges. But if the matter is raised in committee of the whole Senate, the chairman shall leave the chair and report progress. My colleague, please, can read 11 and 9. Mr. President, we came into this chamber today and we are giving a report of the Committee on Finance on asking for securitization of 22.71 trillion, which has been spent, according to him, in the past 10 years. Whether it is 10 years, it is 5 years, whatever it is 7 years or 6 years. The issue is that such payments, such money that are taken, as soon as they are taken, the Senate should be informed. And then we look at it all, we should be advanced with information. A request
that such money is going to be taken, because it's being taken on behalf of the people of Nigeria, and we are entrusted with the power to make laws, and we will not appropriate according to the law of the Constitution. We can appropriate. They don't just ask for the fund. The fund must be asked in accordance with a requirement or request that we are using this fund for A, B, C, D, E every year, and that in the next year, if they want to take another one, this one should have been paid at the end of the year that it was granted. Now we are giving a bulk sum of 22.7 trillion. 23 years. Hold on, 23 that is added to the 850 something billion. That one has to be apart. That's also a problem. But the 22.719 trillion, Mr. President, it will be an abuse of our personal selves and against our privilege that we come here, and it was requested that we have spent this money on behalf of Nigerians in the past 7 or 6 years and approve it without details. There are no details. There are no details. Now we are.
Okay, I think you have given me the. Okay, please round up, because we are many in this place. Yes.
This money of the expenditure of this money that we should approve. You are one of the best legislators in this country. You are. From when I know it till now, you are one of the best. One of the outstanding legislators in this country. So I know that.
Thank you very much for that compliment. Thank you.
It will be wrong for the Senate to approve this thing without having details how these monies were spent. It will be wrong, and we should not even proceed it. I will advise this.
Okay, thank you very much.
Because it's privilege, I will advise that we stand down this debate until we have the details. Until we have the details, that I will speak.
Okay. Please take your seat. Thank you very much. No, somebody raise point of order, please. You raise points of order. Let me say this. We are all on the same page. When we constituted the joint committee, I remember very, very well that I said the committee should be thorough, there should be scrutiny, they should invite every institution that has to do with this ways and means, and I also said those institutions should provide all the necessary details. Well, it's for our committee now to confirm they have no details. If they have no details, hold on. Senate leader, minority leader. Minority leader. Clerk. Close session. Close session.